Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. It's Kathy Klotz Guest here. I'm happy to see everybody. And with me is Mike Ganino. Hey Mike.
I'm so happy to be seen. What's up, KKG?
AMG. Mike Ganino, he's my improv neutrino.
Oh, you didn't forget. I love it.
Mike is the best. I got to tell you, Mike is a gentleman after my own heart. He is wonderful. He is a culture geek. He's an applied improviser. He's an improviser. He's somebody who, like me, is passionate about the lessons of applied improv and how do we take that and bring it into business to make business better. And that's our goal. And we did this a couple of weeks back and we had a blast. And we are going to be doing this, I think, regularly. Mike and I call this, what is it? It's Building Better Businesses. BBB.
Triple B.
BBB. And Mike and I are such culture geeks, and we are just, like I said, we're passionate about it because the time is right. And we want to take all these really wonderful lessons from improv, and how do we apply that to create cultures that work for people? That's really what it's all about, right?
You know, it's so interesting. I was thinking about what you just said, that we're culture geeks, because we got on here a little bit ago to start chatting, and it wasn't even like pre-show prep. We just couldn't control ourselves talking about everything that's going on. And so, yeah, I think geek is the right word.
It is the right word. If you're joining us, let us know, say hey, give us a shout out. This is pumping through Facebook, so give us a shout out. Let us know you're here. That way we know, hey Manuel, yeah, it's evening where you are. It's evening where you are, so yeah, totally get that. Hola, mi amigo. Buenas noches. Mucho gusto verte.
When he said good night, beautiful, did he mean me?
Well, probably.
I'm just kidding.
Because one of us has great hair. The other is okay. But one of us has hair. So
I disagree. You have bangs for Jesus. I love it. Not a lot of people can rock a bang, and you bang the bangs.
I bang the bangs. I'm rocking the bangs for Jesus. Bangs for Jesus. I think it's a charity. I'm starting the charity, and I'm going to call it Bangs for Jesus.
And I think that the point of the charity would be to grow the bangs out, and then you cut them off and you donate them.
I like that.
And then they make things out of them. I don't know. That's the yes and approach to creating charities, I think.
I like that. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. Hey, everybody else. Thank you for joining us. And I know people will come in and out. And don't forget to share this on the wall. You can go ahead and share it. And also, if you got questions, folks, as we're chatting, Mike and I are chatting, please, by all means, let us know. We're going to do this every Tuesday at 3 o'clock Pacific. So we'll make a fancy banner and all that good stuff. So if you like it, say hey. If you're listening, say hey. If you got a question, say hey. If you like Mike's hair, because who doesn't, say hey.
And if you find yourself wanting to say hey for any of those reasons, also share so other people can say hey.
Sure. Sharing is caring. So go ahead and share the post. We're going to jump into it. We're going to talk because there's lots going on in the world of culture. And oh my gosh, we Mike and I cannot contain ourselves. And one of the things that we were talking about before we went live was the big news today. The findings, Eric Holder, former Justice Department under President Obama, his law firm did a complete analysis of Uber, was hired to come in, interview people, do a complete analysis of their culture and make recommendations. And the report came out today. You can see it. I'll post it later. But it came out today. Oh, yeah, Mike's got it. And so Mike and I both read the report, the recommendations. And hey, Laura, hello. What say you, Mike? What's going on? What did you make of the recommendations?
So you know what I really love about these recommendations is they're written so clearly. Yeah. The immediate thing I thought was I went to print it, and it's 18 pages long. 12 pages long here, I think. It's 12 pages long, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a lot of, paid by the hour lawyer speak. What I love about it is it's really simple. And I think that's actually a really important thing here. You and I know from improv that it's very important to be obvious, to be clear about what you're doing. If we're doing a scene together, we've both got to be obvious. And so from an improver's approach, I love how clear it is because it allows it to be obvious. And when we talk about culture, We're not talking about like ping pong tables and waffles. We're talking about people's lives and people's security and people's safety. And I think that the clarity in this is the thing I'm impressed with a lot what's in here, but I'm very impressed with how clear it's written so that, other companies can print it out and say, how are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's such a great observation. I was prepared for all the gobbledygook and the techno speak and having to dissect it and get to the human heart of it. And I didn't feel like I had to do a whole lot of that. It was pretty clear. And, some of the recommendations, hey, JS, and JS, he'll appreciate this because JS is big on culture and creating great cultures. I love the simplicity, but the urgency and the importance of it. I mean, let's face it, Uber is not alone in tech to miss these issues. They've got a culture that lacks diversity, and that's a big one. That's like a big, big thing. You've got a lack of diversity. So when you don't have women or LGBT representation at the top of the company, you don't have people that go, hey, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Is this culture safe for people who feel not treated well and maybe are afraid to speak up? And are people speaking up and it's just not going anywhere? It's being crushed. Is the diversity there? I thought that was so powerful because I think that's such a big thing in the tech sector where sadly, there's not a lot of diversity at the executive level where people have a say in the policy of the company.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I went and saw Alan Alda last night, the famous actor from MASH and West Wing. He actually teaches improvisational and theater tricks to doctors and scientists to help them communicate. He has a whole school for it at Stony Brook University in New York. And then they go around and they train doctors and scientists how to get their ideas across. One of the things that they spoke about on stage last night during this talk for his new book was this stat that I didn't look up. I should have looked it up, but that companies that had women in leadership roles and in executive roles actually had better bottom line results. And so somehow that's getting ignored all the time too, that this isn't just about like, let's be nice. It's about diversity of opinion actually leads to a much better product, much better, everything.
Yeah, no question. It's good for the bottom line. It's good for everybody. It's good for customers. It's good for customer service. It's good for everything. I found it interesting too that, and I really applaud that they took it really seriously. They said, look, I was a little surprised that Kalanick wasn't fired. I don't know the extenuating circumstances, but they did put him on a leave, an extended leave. And they're power sharing. This is really interesting. They're power sharing with the chief operating officer role, so that there is a split role for authority and decision making, and somebody to question at the same level and say, "Hey, wait a minute." So now that role, the CEO's role, is going to be broken up into a couple people, so that there's diversity and accountability. That there's shared accountability, and I think that's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so, the idea that some of this isn't because people weren't just being nice to each other. And this is, you and I were talking about this a little bit ago. This isn't about necessarily that like, oh my God, all these people were clueless and everyone's so nefarious and being nasty to each other. Yeah. It's about the places where somebody could say, stop, we need to talk about this. There wasn't enough voices in the room. That's the issue. And I think that's exactly the division of that labor, the rising up of the person who's in charge of the head of diversity role there. Mm-hmm. That's not about saying we're going to force diversity. It's about saying we're going to have more voices in the room to make better choices together, so that these things can't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Jerry, what's going on? Jerry says, hey, Jerry, you're saying, but this, I haven't seen that article.
It just happened like a little bit ago where apparently there was someone, I think this is what the article that he's sharing says, where someone on the board during the review of this document made some kind of comment.
Jerry, I'm glad you brought that up. I haven't seen it. I'm going to have to go back and read it, so I can't comment on it because I don't know. But it's interesting. I will say this, that clearly, and thank you for bringing that up. clearly the investigation yielded enough information that 20 people were fired. So clearly, and they interviewed like some 200 people, I think is what it was, 200 odd people. Odd people aren't odd, 200 odd number.
They only got to the odd one.
we got it. Rewind.
Oh, this is live TV, folks.
Exactly, Kathy's mouth. They interviewed some 200 and some people, and what they found was enough evidence that there was substantiated claims about what Susan Fowler, her initial blog post maintained, and they found enough supporting evidence in talking to other people that yes, this happened. People covered it up. Yes, it was. Things were looked the other way because this particular person who did this was a high performer. So we made excuses. So they clearly found enough evidence at some degree that they did let people go. So they must have found. So here's what it says. Is there some substantive evidence? Yes, clearly. And clearly Eric Holder's firm found enough evidence to support that as well. So,
well, I think the interesting takeaway for everybody from this whole thing, and really the kind of talking about that designing of better businesses or building better businesses, the triple B, is the idea where it isn't enough to just, and I read this all the time about unconscious bias, how we try to do classes to teach people not to be biased. And the reality is, that's a really dangerous way to run your company. What you need to do is design process that weeds out the bias. And so I love in here, one of the recommendations was around blind resume reviewing. So during hiring, one of their hiring recommendations was to remove names off of resumes.
Yeah.
So that it was just the data, because we know the facts are over and over and over, same two resumes go for a job. A ton of studies show the male candidate will often be seen as more serious or a better fit for the role, even though it's literally the same resume. There's a great book called What Works, and it talks about, it's from I think a Harvard researcher who studies unconscious bias, and basically has said, stop trying to change people's brains and stop hoping that you can design a company where you're just full of nice people who don't do stuff, and just design a process that limits the amount of play that unconscious bias could have. And I think that's what's really interesting as we read this, and as some of the things that we read earlier in these reports are so atrocious, is to say, stop worrying about looking to your left and right and saying, do we have any a-holes who work here? And look at your process and say, how could we design this differently? How could we make sure there's more diversity of opinions in the room? How can we make sure that there's a way for things to be escalated and not hidden? Because that's what was at the root of this continuing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to get back to Gary. Gary, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, the board member, I guess, said that women talk too much at the all hands meeting about sexism. Well, where else are women supposed to bring it up? I mean,
you're supposed to bring it up at the salon, Kathy.
Yeah, I mean, am I supposed to bring it up when all the women get together? It's like, yeah, I mean, I know you didn't mean it like that. I'm sort of, I hear you. It's sort of, it's a tough one because, women try to be heard seriously on these issues. And thanks for bringing that to my attention, Jerry. Yeah. I know that, yeah, I don't know this David Bonderman, but yeah, I mean, where else do women elevate the status and be heard if they're not being heard when they go to HR and they say, this is happening to me. Right. And I'm gonna confess to you all live on camera. When I was 24, this happened to me in a company. And a married man grabbed my butt and grabbed it several times. And I went to HR, and before I could even get out that this person, name inserted, did this to me, they stopped me and they said, we already know who it is. And they blurted out the name. Why? Because I wasn't the first woman he had done this to.
Wow.
They knew they weren't going to do anything because he was a high performer. He was a senior VP who brought in a lot of money to the company. And thirdly, I was told by HR, they're there, young blondie, now go on your way and don't mess up your career about it. So wow. This happened to me. So where else, if they're not going to get redress and taken seriously in HR, where are women supposed to be heard? And so I can understand, I don't know, I haven't read this article, Jerry, but I will go back and read it. Thank you. So I don't know David Bonderman and what he said, but I can tell you instinctively and viscerally, where are women supposed to get redress if they're not being heard at the HR level? So they may be feeling like we have to bring this up because the all hands meetings where all the employees can hear the same thing, and that's where it's supposed to be real. And we talk about real stuff. And I can see why maybe women are saying, I have to bring it up at this point because I'm trying to go through the appropriate channels and nobody's listening and nobody's caring. So that may be what's happening. You know?
Well, and the interesting thing is to say that I don't know that you can talk about it too much.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you can.
As somebody who's, you know, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody, and until it's happened to you, when enough people are saying, hey, it's happening, nobody's listening. Yeah, I'm with Mike. Can you talk about it too much? I don't think so. Yeah. Because until it's being taken seriously, you got to keep talking until somebody listens, right? That's sort of, yeah.
Wow. So in your case, how much longer did you end up working there?
I transferred over to a different boss, and I was at the company about 3 years. I transferred over to a different division basically because I felt like I didn't have support. Support. And then when I left the company, I found out that it had happened to a lot of women. And it wasn't just this one manager. It happened to a lot of women. And I realized that fighting that battle as a 20-something, I was going to lose. And I felt like it wasn't worth it. Yep. And I made the calculation very quickly that I would be better served going somewhere where they appreciated my talents. And I just left the company. I took a job somewhere else. Yep. So I think a lot of women leave. I think a lot of good talent leaves because of that reason.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder how, and based on what I was saying in the article or the research that was talking about how women in leadership roles actually produces more profitable companies was from McKinsey. McKinsey did that study in 2015. And so I wonder what the real world implications are for organizations of not dealing with this.
Yeah.
You know?
Lots of talent. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really interesting thing. Thank you, Jerry, for bringing that up. I think it is. JS says, oh my goodness, lots of good stuff, JS. Thank you. How much transparency was real or fictitious with regards to Uber? That's a really good question. That's a really great question, Jess. I don't know. I will tell you, speaking for me, and I'm curious what Mike has to say. As soon as I found out all these things, I wasn't shocked. And I personally, for me, it was enough for me to say, you know what? I don't want my money to go to a company that looks the other way when these things happen. So I deleted the app. I know a lot of people who did. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people did in response to this blog post going viral. And the fact that Uber, and not just this, but you're right. And his is where the culture, it's a bigger culture issue because it wasn't just the sexism. This is about the same time that Uber got called out for that fake app. And then for one of the executives said that it was his job to collect dirt on all the journalists that published bad stuff about Uber. Like all this, like the crap trifecta exploded. And it wasn't just the sexism. And it seemed to me that this was not only a culture in crisis, but a very smarmy, slimy company. I mean, to be honest, and I hate to put that label, and I don't want to label all the employees because they're not. There's a lot of good people there. But at the surface, it felt like a lot of their policies lacked values. And I know for me, that was it for me. I deleted the app.
Well, as did I. I use other programs, but I will say that I think it didn't. I'll add a little bit. I don't think it lacked values. It was really clear on what was valued. Yeah, it was super clear. It was just up to the rest of us to decide if we valued those same things. Because even in this recommendation, one of the things that they recommend is Uber cleaning up their values a little bit because there are some of them that inherently are leading to an environment where win at all costs. I forget the few specifically. It says, let builders build. That's one of the ones they wanted to get rid of, because that basically says, hey, if someone is doing stuff, get out of their way and who cares. Always be hustling. Meritocracy and toe stepping, and principled confrontation. Those are the ones they're specifically recommending they get rid of in their values, because I think what they found is, no, Uber actually lived up to those values. They're just maybe not the ones that produce the kind of environment that's the most cohesive.
Well, and great point about values, because you're right. Even when a company has crappy values, it's still values. It's just crappy values, and you have to decide, like you well said, Mike, do you support those values or not? And I think
the same way that I think it was maybe President Obama who said this, and I say this all the time to leaders when they say they're unhappy with their team. I say, well, slow down, my friend. You get the culture you deserve. The same way that I think Obama said, you get the politicians you deserve.
Yeah.
And so I think here, as consumers, we get the global work economy that we deserve. And if we don't say that's not in line with who I am, I have to make better choices, then, we can't complain when our daughters go to work if we're not willing to say that's not good enough. I have two nieces, and I'm a brother and I'm a son. And so for me, I can't give my money to a company and then squawk when my nieces are treated unfairly as girls.
Yeah.
That he doesn't jive. And that's my fault if I do.
Yeah, I hear you. JS, makes a couple of comments here, and I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying, JS, because I appreciate what you're saying. And hey, Glenn, good to see you. JS is saying cost versus ethics, cost wins. Just look at Walmart. Well, I see your point. No, I see your point, because, Walmart's the largest retailer, although Amazon, I think, just eclipsed it on a couple things, and I forget what the caveat was, but wow. Amazon is now, I think, has actually unseated Walmart in a couple areas, not everywhere, but it's an interesting argument that you made, Glenn, because the question then is, it's a really valid point. Is the average Uber user more concerned about being politically correct and the alignment of values, or are they more like, I'm gonna save a couple bucks, and what matters to me is I get there on time? I don't know. I think there's a segment of the population, Glenn, and JS, good points though those are, that will always go to the cheapest price. I get that, and efficiency, and totally get it. But I think more and more what we're seeing with a lot of consumers is the intersection of social responsibility. And we're seeing it with especially millennials. Millennials are like, I'm sorry, if you're dumping toxic waste in poor communities, I'm sorry, I don't want to do business with you. If you're screwing over laborers in China, I don't want to do business with you. If you're, whatever it is, if you're doing something unethical, I think more and more consumers are starting to stand up to that kind of stuff. I mean, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, and I think in two ways. I think more and more we're seeing exactly like you said, where consumers are saying this isn't in line with me. Of course, there are going to be people who vote. Who don't vote, frankly, who just say like, hey, I'm not responsible for this. I'm just trying to get somewhere cheaper. I think there's a lot of people who were willing to like delete Uber because there was another option. I think what would have been interesting to see how many people deleted Uber when there wasn't another option, or would they have said, well, I don't have an alternative, so I'm going to stick over here. But I also think secondarily, what we're going to find is that I wonder if it becomes a liability to have Uber on your resume. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder what it might cost them with talent. I don't know the information. I think it's too early to tell. But I do wonder, especially if I'll say this, as a man in a leadership role, I wonder if there isn't some fear for your career of like, I don't want other companies to think that I had anything to do with this, or that I would have thought it was okay. So I wonder what the long-term implications or short-term implications will be around recruiting great talent.
Great question. That's a really great question. Yeah, you're right. That's a really important question, because there's the people who obviously who work there who don't do these things, and they're just trying to earn a living and do good work.
Right.
And are they tainted somehow when they have that on their resume? And does that, and that's the tough part. I think more and more it's like when you work for a company, there are your values and there's the company values. And you're more and more, I think employees are going to have to choose, because part of the transparency I think that JS is talking about is that more and more, like with Starbucks and supporting LGBTQ, rights and all these different, and farmers earning a decent wage, coffee farmers, all these really important things that people care about.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that we're in a world of transparency where companies are more and more are taking a stand, because now not only as consumers can we choose, but we as employees can make choices that say, either I want to stay there because you're consistent with my human values, or you know what? No, you're not consistent with my human values. And therefore, you know what? I'm glad you said something. And I think transparency is a great thing for the marketplace on all those things, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also an interesting thing that then we truly see where those become differentiators in the marketplace. I can go and work at a different place because look at what they're doing. And so we start to see where employers are having to be very upfront. And you and I have agreed on this for a long time, that there is no difference between customer experience, employee experience, and brand. Those are no longer different anymore. It's all one. If you suck to work, people know it. If you suck to your customers, your employees know it. Like, it's one brand. And I think it's going to be interesting. Transparency. I wanted to ask you what you think. How do you feel about pay transparency? How do you feel about a company saying, nope, everyone knows what everyone makes? Because there's been a lot of talk lately about that being the next move in the gender pay equity issue of like, you can't pay people less for the same job if they know what they're making. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there was a company, I'm forgetting who it was, and you probably know this, Mike. There was a company that I think started to publish what people were getting paid for certain jobs.
I mean, Whole Foods does it pretty famously.
Yeah. I think it's really an extraordinary and interesting experiment. I also can see it backfiring in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you can't get down to the individual level, but you can for like jobs, like, all right, this category, this job, we pay this much. I think it would be interesting to see how that could work. I would love to see a place where there's more transparency so women can know about the pay gap and go, you know what? Now we have the information we need to go back and renegotiate and all that other stuff. I'd like that. I also see a lot of human beings being what we are.
Yeah, but I like your idea. I think your idea is interesting to say, what if you had these tight pay bands?
Yeah.
And so you knew that no one is significantly below market. You would say this job is a $60,000 to $65,000 a year job, or a 60 to, and maybe you keep those bands within 5% of each other. So there is some range,
yes,
but it's not so wide that you would be like, wow, you're really getting paid a significant difference. This came up actually with Jennifer Lawrence during the whole Sony leak with North Korea. The Sony leak came out because Realize was getting paid a significant amount of difference. The same thing happened with the cast of House of Cards. When they had a huge, there was a leak of information and they found out that Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright Penn, that they were getting significantly different. And so she actually said, no, I'm as popular as he is on the show. You're paying me the same. And that wouldn't have happened because she wouldn't have known if that leak hadn't happened. So it's really interesting to think about. But I like your suggestion of communicating the bands specifically so people can see, hey, this is in general where this job plays. The government does that.
Yeah, I think the government does do that. And I think that kind of transparency might help bring about a little bit more equality. I think that's a great idea. As long as the bands are narrow enough to be meaningful, then I think that could be really helpful information. Yeah, I'd also like to see VP pay, executive pay. And of course, we all know about the executive gap, the executive to employee gap, pay gap. That I think is probably more well documented. But. So
on that note, this week the release was. I feel like we're doing like a little news talk show. I love this. On that note, the big news happening right now is the Verizon acquisition of Yahoo.
Yeah.
And so everyone for a long, I don't know why we're all, well, I think there's a gender issue here, but there's, we've been obsessed with Marissa's pay and what she's getting over there. So the big release this week is her $186 million send off from Yahoo with Verizon's acquisition. They're going to combine roll Yahoo up into Oath, which is their new content platform where AOL lives now. And so with that, speaking of this, Marissa's not going with them. She's not going to go to Verizon, so she's off to do her next thing. And what we've learned is that they're going to lay off 15% of the employees. So I think it's interesting to think about how do you do that in a way that then inspires the people who are left behind to do great work. I think that's an interesting challenge.
Yeah. Thanks, JS and Glenn, for your comments.
It's so fun to know that this isn't going into an abyss.
Yes. Yeah.
Someone's listening and watching live. It's fun.
No, we really appreciate the comments, everybody. Glenn, JS, everybody. We're very appreciative. This is great.
Over on my page, Brittany Metz, who's an improv friend of mine, she said, "Oh my God, you know each other." So somehow you know Brittany too.
I do. I know Brittany. Hey, Brittany. If she's yeah, I do know Brittany. I do. Holy moly, yeah, because I was a big blabber. I was a big blabber back when Brittany was with Blab back in the day. I had a show on Blab, yeah. So people think Kathy was a blabbermouth. They're like, yeah, that's true.
Yep, but it was on point.
But I was on point, and I delivered.
I love it.
Such a great question. Yeah, 15%, that's a tough pill to swallow. I don't think it's a surprise to everybody with Yahoo's performance, as you say. I don't think it is. But it is a morale hit, though. I think one of the things, because I think many of us have been in that experience where we've survived a layoff, and you're doing more than with less, and you're also trying to find morale when Marissa's getting. I'm not saying she either deserves it or doesn't deserve it. She's getting $186 million payout. I think what happens to the people that are left there is, where are we going? Are we even clear on our strategy? You're asking me to stay. There's a lot of hot companies in the Valley I could be at and make more money probably. So if you're keeping me, what am I doing? Where's the morale? Are you any clearer in terms of what this combined company is? Because as far as I'm concerned, I look at Yahoo today, Mike, and I say, Yahoo? Because I don't know who they are, what they do. I still don't. Their strategy isn't clear to me. I'm not sure they know. So I think there's a big morale issue. Yeah, I do. I mean,
especially when you're bringing people over and the idea of because what you said, this is the perfect time if anyone wants to leave to say I'm leaving because no one would blame them.
No.
They would say, great, got it, totally get it. And so I think there's something interesting about really with this merger and adding this group to the Oath content group is really for Yahoo to be super clear about what's next. And it goes back to being really obvious about what they want to create, being very clear about what's headed and how people take part in that. And I think, I think there's a lot of people who are going to want that clarity. And so, I don't know, I guess if Verizon and Verizon brought us in to be consultants here, this would be the time where we would spend the work saying, how do we redefine what's next? And how do we create a burning platform for these people to go launch and do the next big thing? Because otherwise, it's a very good time to lose your top talent.
No question. It's exactly that. It's like, if I'm staying, what am I fighting for? What exactly am I building?
Yeah.
You want me to stay and give 100% because people are leaving, but I don't understand what our strategy is, who we are in the world, what's our big story.
Right.
How am I supposed to fight for that and be completely doubled down and invested emotionally when I don't think the company knows what they're doing? That's asking a lot of any employee. Because here's the thing, you and I both know, Mike and I talk a lot about this. If you don't know your story and you can't articulate it and your values, well, if your employees don't know, how the hell are your customers supposed to know? How is that going to work? It just doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think now's the time. And, and JS, you cracked me up with your comments.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
these are all funny. And the Glenn says, yeah, that new name, yeah, the new name, yeah. None of this inspires confidence, but
Yeah.
and it really comes down to give employees something to fight for. So when they come to work, they know that they're building something amazing and they feel part of something. And I just don't know what it is they're part of building.
Right.
Do you? I don't know.
No, and I think that's the thing is all of the headlines are going to lead with the purchase price, the merger, and Marissa's salary or Marissa's golden parachute, I guess. And there's no talk about this. And you and I know as storytellers how critical storytelling is here. And so the fact that I think there needs to be a stronger narrative from Oath around here's what's next and here's how we're going to change the world here. This is a big moment. So it'll be interesting. Maybe next week on the show, we'll be able to talk about maybe they did come up with that. Maybe they heard our humble little show here and they said, let's create the story.
See the story. It really is. I mean, it's so true. It's like culture and story are such two sides of the same coin because, your story impacts your culture. Without a narrative, you don't have a culture, and your culture defines that. It says who we are in the world, and it just feels to me like Yahoo's got a big culture and a big story problem on its hands, and until it can figure that out, I don't know where it goes from there. But I should hope it does.
Get a loan for a couple things. I think great, go do it. I also think about the 85% of people who are left there. I want them to win.
I want them to win.
Want them to win. Yeah.
Give them a reason to rally around, or you're not going to keep it. Jerry, your comment cracks me up. Oath sounds like oaf. yeah.
I love it. And I think Oath exists already. I think they're doing something with it. I've never heard of it until today, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, I hope so. I do too. I mean, all this we're teasing, and obviously, I'm sure the people internally are have their jokes going around, and I really hope for their sake, and I hope for the market, but I hope for the employees who are if they stay, they really know what they're staying for, and it's not just a job. I think there's a time where people in the economy would have stayed for a job, but when talent is. There's so much talent out there and there's so much opportunity, especially in the tech sector today. Yeah. You've got talented people that could go anywhere. So you've got to really work hard as a company to keep them. Now's the time.
Yeah.
And really make that right. And it's also an opportunity, don't you think, Mike, for them to really reach out to their employees that are there and say, help us. What do you think we should do? How do we make culture work for you? How do we make this a win?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a chance too with the when you bring two groups together, there's a chance to say, okay, let's co-create something here. What are we doing now? How are we doing this? Yeah. What wasn't working before? What do you want more of? Because there's a huge call to be able to do something new. There's a cathartic moment to be able to say, this could be our time.
Yeah.
And I think if they don't heed the advice of listening, of empathy, of co-creating, of yes-anding, there's a huge thing that could be missed here when you combine groups. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I think actually by next week, we'll probably have more intel here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. Glenn, you're saying, how much the new name cost, what ad mark firm got the big bucks for the new branding. Well, all that is all interesting, and it is interesting, but it still comes down to, in my mind, story wins every time. No narrative, no company. A mark and a logo does not a narrative make. Does not a company make. I've seen companies with beautiful logos, but they've got no cohesive, compelling story to tell the market or their employees. So who cares? So I think the bigger question is, here's the thing. I had this conversation about Yahoo with a friend probably about 6 months ago. And once upon a time, I worked with Yahoo. They were a client of mine. And I have great affection for them because coming from the Valley, they were such a Wall Street darling. In '96, everybody wanted to work at Yahoo.
It was the hottest place to be.
The hottest place to be back in the day. And, they lost their way. But I cannot think of a good example of – I've never seen an example, let me put it this way, of a company that was profitable that had no compelling narrative.
No.
I can't. And somebody said, well, they're failing because they're financially not profitable. I said, well, of course. However, the two are inextricably linked. I cannot think of one company that defies the odds here that has had no story, no compelling story. Their employees don't know what it is, and yet they're financially profitable. I just can't think of one.
Yeah.
And that's no accident, right?
Right. Well, and it's the idea of like what actually is it a media company, but it's like choosing that. And I think it's one of the things where I think on the flip side of this, Google has done such a good job of being like, we are search. We are, however we feel about it or think they might have messed it up. Their thing is we're democratizing search.
Yeah.
And that's a compelling story. That's something that's easy to get behind. And that's something that the other products have been able to tap into. The other Google products have been able to tap into and say, oh, this is still our core here. Even for me, when I use Gmail, people make fun of me because my Gmail is very full. Because it's search. If I want something, I'm just going to type it in and it will find me all the things that I need.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, clearly I'm not a zero inbox kind of guy because it's just search. And I think that that's one of the things that, I don't know. I think that's one of the things for Google on the flip side has been so clear versus like what is a Yahoo? Like, well, I know what a Yahoo is, but what is it and how do I use it and when do I go to it? And so I think it'll be interesting to see, Oath is the place for brands. So we'll see what Oath can do with this brand.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I think one of the biggest things that and Glenn, you said it really well here. There's a big disconnect between the management and the board, and between the employees and the market and everybody.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of disconnects to go around. The big thing, really here is, as we're saying, not only what is compelling, but when you've lost a lot of your loyal fans, I don't know that you can get them back. I think there was a time where, look, I wanted to Yahoo, yet another, I think, what was it, Fish's Oracle, or whatever Yahoo stood for, the acronym. Do you remember Yahoo?
Yeah.
I love that. And there was a time where there were rabid fans. Yahoo had so many rabid fans, but I think what's sad to me is that they've lost, I think, their rabid fan base. I think they've alienated their fan base. Their fan base doesn't even know who they are anymore. And I think the thing that's hard here is they're starting over. Mm-hmm. Once you lose your fan base, I think you're kind of sunk. Yeah. And you don't need everybody, but you better have a loyal fan base that's with you. And I was one of their loyal people, and I don't know what they are. So
that was the MySpace stories too. MySpace. It was like, at the end, it's like, what did it become?
I don't know.
It's so interesting because we think about these things. I'm doing a talk in Honolulu in shortly, and I was writing the description for them, and we're talking about disruption and innovation and where that actually comes from. Because I think what people think is it comes from this place of like, there's magical creative people out there, and if we could just hire them, they'll innovate. But the reality is that innovation is just on the flip side of agreement. Innovation is just on the flip side of saying something's working there. What could we add to that to make it better? And if you look at any of these companies that we're talking about, why did Facebook make it? MySpace didn't. It wasn't that MySpace couldn't do what Facebook did, couldn't hire who Facebook did. It's just that they weren't listening to the same information and not making those same things. It wasn't about a magical being coming along. And the same thing for Uber. It wasn't that they thought of something no one had thought of before. It just, it was like, oh, we're going to flip a coin here. There's cabs. Yeah. It's annoying to get a cab. Let's try it a new way. Airbnb. All of these things existed. It's just, it's finding something to agree with and then highlighting that. And I think that the places where these companies get lost is forgetting that. And again, trying to be too many things without a clear story.
So true. It's so true. And I love that you said that because, so much of the mystique, innovation. It's like, like it's some kind of magic show and light and, all this kind of, pyrotechnics. And really, right. Your point is well said. It's some stuff truly is disruptive, but most stuff is not revolutionary. It's evolutionary. It's somebody noticed one little tweak, like you said, one little thing. And that could be, then that makes a big, big difference. So it's looking for the small things that lead to the big, big changes. And and I think you're right. I think that's a really doable message. And I think that's where Yahoo seemed to have missed. But Yahoo missed a lot of things, sadly. I don't know if it's too late. Glenn, you're in the pessimistic camp, and I don't blame you. It might be too late. It might be too late. I do kind of feel like to not be super pessimistic. But I kind of do feel like Yahoo has had so many opportunities, and every time they've tried to reinvent themselves, it hasn't worked. And it just feels to me like maybe it. Do they break up into smaller companies? Do they just take the technology, get rid of the parts that aren't working, get rid of the divisions rather than try to reinvent the whole enchilada? I don't know, but I do think you're right on something, Glenn, which is there's got to be a radical change because clearly everything Yahoo's tried to up to date hasn't really worked.
Yep.
But they haven't, and I would argue that they haven't tried everything because the one thing that I think Mike and I are in agreement on is that they just didn't nail their story. Figure out who the hell they are. Mm-hmm. Figure out who they are. That's my biggest thing here.
And even if you're going to say you're a media company, you have to be a media company for specific people delivering specific content, you know? And I think that's the challenge. So we're a media company. Great. Then let's define that. So I think it's interesting. And I think we'll see what happens here with Oath and what's going on. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them again here on the show.
Yeah. You know, we've both seen a lot of stuff, Glenn. I'm with you. You know, seen a lot of stuff. And, you know, I do have great affection for some of these companies. I even have a Netscape story that I'll tell you one day.
Oh, God. I'm writing it down so we don't forget.
That's right. Netscape. I got a Netscape. I don't know if everyone remembers Netscape.
Oh, my gosh.
I did it myself. Yeah. Yep. It's true. And you got to be able to, you got to be nimble. And I think you're onto something, Glenn. Well, big ships don't dodge for shit. No, they don't. They don't. They don't. You got to be nimble. You got to be nimble. And I think Mike and I are saying, and it comes down to this: give your employees a passionate reason to stay. Yeah. You know, that's it.
Yep.
So yeah, you got mail, and it's not. Yeah, you got mail. Glenn says you got mail. Yeah, that's. And it's not email. We both know email is not Yahoo's big. And honestly, can I be blunt? That's the only reason I've used them, and mail's not it. That's the only reason I've continued to stay with Yahoo. And it's not even that great, but
yeah, for me, it's that I just have an old account, and so I have certain things set up there. I mostly use Gmail. I use Gmail through my website, you know, my MikeGanino.com, and but I have a couple of old things that are still tied to Yahoo, and it's just easier to go look there.
I agree. I also missed the boat with, I could go on, but it missed the boat with a lot of stuff. I think at one point its social database, Yahoo Answers, was really, really, do you remember Yahoo Answers?
Yeah.
They had a really social app before social was really, really social.
Yeah.
I think that was their golden. Whoops.
We're back.
Sorry, guys. The screen froze up.
The screen was saying, okay, you guys, it's enough for week one.
Its own, Mike. I don't know what it's.
I think it's telling us. It's saying, "Hey, the network is cutting us off." They're saying, "Move on and send these people back for episode 2."
Exactly. I think that you're right. Yes, it's been almost an hour, and video likes a lot of bandwidth. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and that was fun, Mike.
This is fun. The idea is that we're going to get together every week, Tuesday, 3:00, and we're just going to talk about some of the stuff that's in the news and think about how our approach to doing business might help some of these other companies. So we'll bring stories, we'll chat, and we'll see who shows up and share with them.
Exactly. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m., Mike Ganino, the wonderful Mike Ganino. Please look him up. Mike, where can they find you?
They can find me at Mike Ganino everywhere. MikeGanino.com, at Mike Ganino. I think if you type in Mike Ganino, you'll find me. So yeah, we'll find each other. If you go to Mike.tips, if you can't remember Ganino, you do Mike.tips. That's an easy way to get in touch.
Super awesome. Love it. You guys can find me at Kathy Klotz Guest, no hyphen on Twitter, and at keepingithuman.com. That's where I hang out. And you can find us back here next week. So that was a little weird. Yeah, it was like the internet said, all right, you're done. You're done. Don't shoot your wad here. Save it for another week.
Between your bangs and my height, they were like, the girl cannot handle this.
It's too much hair. It's too much hair. It's 80s hair. 80s glam rock hair.
I love it.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mike.
See you.